to accept bulky waste and then get rid of it. And he'd like us to consider the adoption of increasing some of those fees. This is not a way to just get more tax money in a different way, not just to gain more revenue, but for the bulky waste system to pay for itself, if that's possible. Joe, is that a good lead-in?
Yes, thank you very much. It is. I mean, when you try to raise fees, it just seems like you're just adding
Right.
more taxes. That's not what this is. These fees haven't been looked at in well over 10 years, and I believe it was 14 years. I have Greg Rinks is over in the corner. He's our transfer station supervisor, does a good job there, and he's been looking at these fees. They haven't been touched in a long time. When you start looking at what the cost, so the transfer station is a nice service to have, but it has a cost to it. And you look at it, we have people drop off their bulky waste. Right now we're charging them $110 a ton. It works out to be, and it's only $70 to dispose of it. The problem is we have to have Willie Waste comes down and hauls it up to Willimantic, and that costs about $30. That was always the hidden cost of the transportation out of there. So after all said and done, it's costing the town over $100 a ton. We're charging $110, and I got payloader up there, 3 guys there doing all this stuff. And as you can see on this spreadsheet, bulky waste and demolition materials is probably 80% of the fees. So I kind of looked at all the fees. There's also some areas. Land clearing debris is something that I wanted to add in there because we didn't really have that. Someone could come in with a large equipment tire and it might cost us $100 to get rid of it, but we have a $7 fee or something like that. So that's a to be determined. A lot of this stuff is, what does the town cost to dispose of this, like Mr. Nickerson was saying, and we should have a reasonable amount on top of that for operating that. And then dismantling boats. Someone could drop a big boat off and just dump it on us, and they're getting their 5.5 cents a ton. Well, we have to sit there and smash it up, stick it in the dumpster, and handling fee. Someone could bring a shed up there. There's a lot of stuff, the little things that these fees protect the town, so it's not like someone is taking advantage. And the last one, which is the first thing I actually started going after this, was the bulky waste pickup. It's a great service in town. It's not fair, actually. I mean, it's $25 to pick up 10 items. It takes about an hour for my guy to pick it up, at least bring it back. He's hauling it in there, and then we still have to pay $170 or $100 a ton to get rid of it, and we're charging $25. That's a nice service. And I've heard that some of the people tell the local contractors, well, the town does it for $25. That's not fair, to local contractors. So this is, we try to bring that up. This is up to 5 items. I'm proposing $50. That's a very reasonable amount. You're having someone, we're not stopping anyone from bringing it to the transfer station. They can do it, but if someone wants it picked up at their house, up to 5 items, $50. If it's up to 10 items, it's $100. That's still a little less than the going rate, but it's more. That's what we should be doing: is be fair, but be reasonable, but not giving away the ranch on it. So that's what these are. But in the end of the day, this is more revenue. Getting back to like the Parks and Rec, how they're doing their kind of trying to sustain themselves a little more. This would sustain ourselves a little more. And the last element that's not in this chart is that I'm proposing to increase the commercial hauler fee for $1 a ton. I did explain what that's all about. We did raise that fee when I first got here 3.5 years ago. We didn't charge any difference. Every other town does, as far as an administrative fee and as far as so to add an extra $1 after 4 years. That move 4 years ago has raised an extra $60,000 in revenue. For the town. It's still a fair, and actually all the businesses in town, they still can put a garbage can at the side of the street if they want to, and we'll pick it up for free. It's the businesses that are using dumpsters. And then like a CWPM comes in and picks it up. That's what we're talking here. Because when they pick it up, then they bring it up to Preston where we have it dropped off. They say it's from the town of East Lyme, and they charge us. Then we have to pay for it. Then we charge them back.
And there's a lot of administrative costs that go along with that.
We're carrying the money. We're carrying the money for them. We're tracking them down.
Right.
So, and that's what other towns. So that's this proposal. That's in a nutshell.
Are there questions for our Public Works Director?
One of the not really a couple questions, but first of all, the nice thing about this, you're increasing the fees, but if you don't utilize the service, it's not going to cost you anything. This is only if you take something up to the transfer
Correct.
station or have them come.
It's a user fee.
Yeah, and I know I had my own dumpster brought in and filled it and they hauled it away. I wish I had had Bobby Schultz come. It would have saved
At
me a lot of money.
$25.
At 20, even at $50, would have saved me some money. So, and looking at the bulky waste and so forth, it's only going up a very, a penny a pound. That's not a lot considering, very few of us bring a ton up there, but a lot of us bring 25 or 30 pounds up there, so you're not talking about a lot. And in this day of increased challenges on town budgets and stuff like this is something that doesn't hit every taxpayer. It only hits those that are going to go up there and utilize the service. And like you said, you can still put it in the garbage out front at your curb if it fits in there and there's no impact, so.
Right.
That's the best deal in town. You put it out the street and we pick it up for free.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question related, not to this
Mr.
proposal. While I was at the transfer station this weekend, I was asked by two people, when we had the hurricane several years ago, the town offered to, have the debris brought to the Veteran Field lot for free, and then the town took care of it. And the question was, we had the nor'easter this year where a lot of people lost trees. So what criteria does the town use to make that offer? Does it have, I don't know what was used 4 or 5 years ago. People in the room may not know what was used during that hurricane, but there was, it would have been nice if, because of the weather, we had a break with getting rid of the trees that fell down in our yard. So, not related to this item, and we don't have to address it.
No, I know,
but
and
it's
I've gotten those questions too.
We did waive the fees this year in September for 5 or 6 days. I mean, it actually cost, in lost revenue, it probably cost $3,000, and Mr. Rinks kept track of that. But we did it, to answer your question, what the criteria is, case-by-case basis. There was another instance, a storm, and I talked to the first selectman, does this raise to the level of, are we gonna waive the fees? Well, if we start getting in the habit of every single storm, it's still gonna, and I think it was either Irene or Sandy, but it was, because it was before I was here, so it was at least 5 years ago that by vets, that field was used in that manner, but that's a major event. But we did waive them for a week in September. I can't remember, we had so many different issues.
The specific was the nor'easter we had on a Friday night, the third nor'easter or the fourth, where we had a lot of trees down.
And we waived the fees because it was the right thing to do, and we actually, and I talked to the first selectman, we actually got ahead of that, and before people started asking, we put it out there that we're waiving the fees for a week, to give people,
Okay, so it was for a week, okay.
It was like a week, but we didn't have it out there for, 2 months, because, if you just open it up,
You can get,
if you've seen the pile up there now, because.
I was there Saturday. It's a big pile.
Scare is horizontal grinders down, and we're like 9th town in line, so we're.
So it's
we're
based
having
on the
trouble.
event and based on discussion with the first selectman on whether the fees are waived for,
It's always through, the
based on
first
the-
selectman will always
Very
be the
good.
one that
Based on
makes
the
that call.
situation.
and it was waived for that nor'easter?
It
It was
was.
for a week. Are we
It was.
provide that information back to the
Yep.
people that asked me? Thank you.
And I would think too, though, probably during Sandy or Irene, whichever it was, we probably did get eventually some reimbursement from the federal government, because
It was a bigger
it
storm
was
with FEMA involved.
FEMA got
Correct.
involved in that, so.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'll move to approve the revised fees for the transfer station and commercial haulers as submitted and to be effective immediately.
Second?
Was immediately the right number, Joe? I mean, you're gonna.
I have
go
a
through the
sign all ready to be
process.
made,
Okay.
so I guess immediate would be,
Once you
well,
post,
effective,
upon posting,
Effective
maybe?
Tuesday, maybe?
what's today's
You
date?
should post the sign before you start
I'd have to look at
charging.
dates. I mean, you could be nice and make it May 1st.
Let's do it, okay, I'll change that.
Let's make it May 1st to give
Since we-
people,
Okay.
we're gonna get a rush at the.
Okay.
So April 30th is.
I'll
gonna be
change
madness.
the draft motion here then.
To May 1st.
Move to approve revised fees for the transfer station and commercial haulers as submitted and to be effective May 1st, 2018.
We have that
Second the
amended
amended
second.
motion?
Okay. Any other comments? Thank you, Joe, for this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Great, thank you. Next is the discussion and possible action on the installation of a streetlight on Dodge Court. Here's some public delegation tonight. Obviously, this also fits into the realm of public works. And Joe is our streetlight guru, having gone through a big transformation in town of going to LED lights. Joe, could you bring us up to speed on this one?
The reason I'm here is exactly what you heard before.
Right.
And also the other thing is, everyone, they want to keep cutting our budgets, and I can't just say to one person coming in, I want a street light, and it costs me an extra $1,000 and add it to my budget when I don't have the money. So, two purposes. One, I think, in my opinion, this board should be the one that chooses on a case-by-case basis if they need to be added, because it's really, otherwise, how do I judge one person from another who needs it on a case-by-case? So that's what I put in front of you. For this board, there's two things. Is it needed, and how much does it cost? And so I put in there how much it costs. So we have a contract now, because we do own our lights in town. We have a contract that if we're looking to install a new one, like we put in 2 new lights down by, on the road down into a hole in wall that were, I believe, no, there was one new light right behind Gumdrops and Lollipops.
Right.
It's a state road, it's a town road going through there, town access way. So in a case like that, we do that because that's, it's going down a town road.
Well,
In a
I
case-
asked that for that because of all the pedestrian
it's a public
traffic we
safety. It's a
had.
public safety. So if it's a public
Yeah.
safety issue, but in this case, I had a resident, and what I told Mrs. Beebe is send a letter in. That's what you got.
I have it.
For her request. I asked her to be here because I'm not the one asking for it. She is. And so, but I put it together. This is the cost, and it is at the end of the road. How, from a public safety matter, there are cul-de-sacs, or there's roads like this that don't have lights. There's roads that do have lights like this. Unfortunately, the lights have been up for so long that you could go in different areas of town. In the northern end of town, there's not a lot of lights. In certain areas, there's a lot of lights. So
Sure.
I don't know what the answer is, except that if this board does choose to move forward, is I would request transfer for contingency to put in the light.
You don't have the money for this. I
Yeah,
get
the
it.
ongoing cost going forward, because we did move to an LED lights, it's only like 60 cents a month. It's pretty nominal. It used to be about $10, now it's 60 cents a month, so that's a home run, these LED lights. As the other neighbor, I didn't catch her name, but it is true, these LED lights, even though they're a third the wattage, they're pretty bright. I mean, you see them in town. The light goes down, but it definitely changes the look of, when you look outside. I have a light outside of my house, and you see it, so it's
Yeah.
depending on what people are. So I don't have an answer, except I put it in front of this board if they want to go forward. I'm not sure why it's specifically needed, but the resident requested it.
I get it. We have opposing opinions on this one too, and some testimony tonight was that other people don't want it either. I kind of can't take that as hearsay, nor is this a courtroom. But I'm very interested on actually maybe talking to the neighbors, and actually would like to eyeball this and maybe get down there on a dark night and see what it's like, and what the possibilities are of people putting in their own property lights, security lights around their property, like I have in mine, and so many people do. Lamp posts, driveway lights, motion detector lights, those kind of things for individual properties. I would like to see the property and talk to the neighbors first and gather up some more opinions. I don't know how you all feel, but the opposing viewpoints got me to thinking, well, maybe there's more to this.
I would too, and if there's still a light that comes on at a later time at the Navy facility,
Tim can move that up.
maybe you could talk to them too. Hey, can you adjust this so when it gets dark early, the light comes on earlier? Because I'm sure it could be. But I agree with you. I wouldn't mind tabling this so we could actually go down and look at it, at night and so forth
Yeah,
like that.
try to grab
And see
some
what it looks
pictures.
like when the light is on at the Sound Lab facility there.
I don't recall any police activity, but I'm going to also check with the police and see if there's any. We get some pedestrian traffic through our town hall property heading toward the lake. People hanging out in our pavilion, especially in summer. Kids, young adults, people bringing balls and the dogs and things. But I'd like to check in with the police too and see if there's been any activity.
I haven't used it in this town yet, because actually this is the first request I had, but I did formulate a request form that I kind of short-circuited here because Mrs. Beebe asked, and a lot of stuff's going on, and I didn't want to delay this. The reason I bring it is on the form, it says, who are the list of your neighbors, and are they in agreement with it? And if this ever comes in the future, I will do this for this
Yeah.
very reason, that if one person wants it, it's unfair to this board to say, weigh in either or, and then all of a sudden hear from a neighbor, like, I didn't want it. So, that's
Okay.
probably the process in the future. I just said, so to put this off a month and then get the names of the property owners and to get a letter from them should
Yeah.
be part of this process. Unfortunately, it lengthens the time of someone's
we gotta do it
request,
right.
but it's the due diligence, and I was trying to get this in front of the board, but that's probably the way that needs to happen.
Well,
You
it's
learn.
been decades and decades, so we can go another month to do it right and make sure. So let's.
I'll
postpone
table it, or
Is
just?
there any other discussion that needs to happen? Any other questions that we could?
I think that's very reasonable. I think we should take a trip down there at night
Yeah.
and, not together because we need a quorum. We can
Right.
individually head down there and check it out and see how it looks.
Well, Dan,
And,
because of your office proximity to that, you should be our lead.
I can see it. I'll get my telescope and I'll be able to, my corner of my
Okay.
office
You
is
do
in
see
the-
cars heading down there and turning around. It's only us.
It's only us.
On our way to
Don't be
Dairy
concerned. It's,
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move to table item
Okay.
2B.
I don't know if we need
until.
a motion
Okay,
or-
well, if we don't, we can just continue it
Yeah,
on
we'll
then.
just continue it.
For all business then. Okay.
Good. And thank you for the feedback tonight, both of you. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Next on our agenda is the discussion of tax abatements for volunteer firefighters. I believe if, just so you know the process, as we have this discussion, should we go further with this, it would require an ordinance. So it's only for discussion tonight, not a vote, not a decision. But it's been brought to our attention that many towns that rely on volunteer firefighters, and they're so hard to come by because everyone's busy, and especially the teenagers that we used to get involved in firehouses at a young age. Some of the firefighters we have now started when they were 16 and 17 years old. They're busy doing other things now. They're playing sports, and they're so engaged in the global community that firefighting isn't the sexy thing it maybe once was, if it ever was.
I don't know that going into a
Well,
burning
there's
building.
some people that think that. So here's the deal. We would like to provide an incentive. Volunteer is volunteer, but these people are putting their time, their talent, they have to go through training and continuing education and continuing training and all that. They get up in ungodly hours of the night to jump into ambulances and save people and save property in our town. The two fire chiefs have asked us to consider offering a $1,000 tax break off of town-assessed property. If someone was a volunteer fireman, firewoman, and they owned a home, that would be $1,000 less off their property tax. If they didn't own a home, but they did have a car registered in town, it would be up to $1,000 of a car that would be in their name. I suppose multiple cars. It's overall a tax break of $1,000.
like a credit?
It'd be a credit. It'd be a credit. So it's not money outlay. Yes, we would lose a revenue stream. We would estimate at this day and age that 20 people would qualify. We hope that this program would incentivize other people to join on and to give even more credits out. But we think this is about a $20,000 event to the town. So you know. And I can field questions about this. You have some paperwork. I hope you read through it. I know you did. What we would want to do is direct our town attorney to work with the fire chiefs for the criteria that would be involved, because we don't want someone signing up and getting the credit. They're going to sign up and show up, right? You have to show up to a certain number of, certain percentage of calls in order to qualify. So this would be somebody who really is engaged and fully active. We have many, many people in town who are volunteer firemen on the roles, on the roles of both departments, but aren't exactly active. So we would want to increase and have criteria on that is verified with the Selectmen's office. We need a beginning date of this ordinance. We would need to annually renew the people on the list that qualify, and certify that they are active and indeed engaged. And then obviously in the continuing education and training as well, that they're recertified. Are there any questions?
Just a couple of comments. When I was still working as a resident trooper in Salem, they had a review, and one of the of public safety services. One of the things that on the fire service is that it's a national thing, the decrease in volunteers.
Right.
Training has become so stringent. It used to be you just became a fireman, you showed up, and you responded to calls.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. It takes a lot of man hours of training every year just to maintain proficiency, either as a firefighter or as a emergency medical technician. And it's getting, and like the rest of it, there's so many more challenges for everybody to meet their obligations. You know, you look at something like softball. We used to have 15 or 16 softball teams. Now I think we're down to 4 or 5. I mean, dynamics have changed. And we talk about the money this costs, but the reality is if we don't start getting the volunteers, we do have a responsibility to have fire services or emergency services hiring an additional fireman or two to handle the calls and that because of the lack of volunteers. One would probably be about $80,000.
More.
Two would be, or more.
Yeah.
So you're talking about if we have to go out and add one paid firefighter to our payroll, we're talking upward of $80,000 to $100,000. So I think it's a great opportunity to look forward to work with the fire chiefs, and I've talked to Chief Ricks about this a couple times. I think it's, and I like to see that the fire chiefs, looking at results of that fire safety study, looking at ways to make their service better and recognize the people that are volunteering their time. So that's it.
Any comments?
No, I think it's a good concept. I think there's some details, of course, that need to be worked out. But we have to incentivize attracting good volunteers to the fire department. It's certainly in the town's interest to do that, and this is a very sensible way, I think, to approach it. So I'd be in favor of it, with the right
With the right
controls.
criteria.
Yeah.
Right, indeed.
Yeah, I have a couple comments and maybe a question. We have a lot of volunteers in town, but not all of our volunteers are putting themselves in harm's way for the benefit of others. So from that standpoint, the risk that these folks take and the fact that the numbers are decreasing, I'm certainly in favor of it. Question regarding certification as this is worded, and I guess we can get into that a little further, but it talks that they have to be certified by the chiefs. I don't know if there's any firefighting certification they get above and beyond the chiefs, that they would have to have that certification, not just the chiefs say so that they're certified.
Yeah, there's fire,
So
there's a
the
lot of
terminology in here, I'd just like to
Yeah.
make sure it's tied to the appropriate level of
Yeah, we'll clean that up.
certification for the folks.
There's a national standard that they have to be certified for. I think this is talking about the certification of if they qualify
Locally,
in
in addition to
locally
their
for
federal.
this
Right.
program.
Okay,
The certification of this program.
that they're an active
and
member. right,
That they're an active member
certified.
at a certain level.
Right.
But we should be clear on that.
And then, of course, if it does increase the number of volunteers, how do we make sure it doesn't go from $20,000 a year to $40,000 a year?
It would be my dream if it did. It would be the end goal is if we had 40 volunteers in this town, that'd be a good thing. There's a certain finite number of hours. Of course, if the calls go up, then we need more volunteers anyway, and the calls are going up. But in the end, you don't need 10 people to show up to an ambulance call when 2 can fit in the truck. So there's ways that this will limit itself anyway, because if If you can't make certain number of calls because there's too many people, then a certain number of people would,
Yeah,
if you
and
understand.
I'm not concerned about
Right.
it going from 20 to
No, it'd be a good thing.
40,000.
That's good kind of
On the other hand, we'll have to pay for it, and we'll just have to,
Yep.
we'll have to
Yep.
accommodate that when we do our budget process.
That's absolutely true. Did you have something to throw in there, Anna?
I would just,
I guess you're, yeah. Get your 15 seconds of fame.
just a couple of comments that I think perhaps we should define what it means
Yeah.
to be a volunteer firefighter. And I think there should be some description of how many hours that you put in over the course of a year.
Right.
So that, like, if somebody, well, I guess once we have the definition of what it means to be an active firefighter, and then look at the number of hours that you put in as a volunteer.
Sure.
I think there should be some criteria defining
We're
that. 'cause-
definitely going to, and Mr. O'Connell, our town attorney, in discussing this with him, if it's possible, and how this would go about, he would sit down with the fire chiefs to make sure we're crystal clear about what that criteria would be, what the standard is.
Because it's kind of silent on those.
Yeah, and the threshold of do you qualify or don't you? Because we're not going to give this away. You can't just sign up and be a member. You need to be an active member at a certain level to get this. So, well put.
Yeah, I would just say, the concept is great, and the
Yep.
details have to be worked out, and the criteria has to be established, and in a way that's fair and makes sense for both sides.
I don't think we need a motion as much as I will direct the town attorney to craft an ordinance first of all, for discussion, and then we'll send it out to public hearing and so on and so forth.
Plus, there are several towns that have very, very successfully implemented these programs too, so, there's plenty of places to research as well.
Correct. Thank you all for your input and understanding the importance of this. Next on our agenda is the discussion and action. We need a clarification on the non-affiliated wage and benefit package for 2018-19. We passed that last week, but we didn't give all the details in the motion. So we just want to, nothing has changed. We just want to fully clarify and make the motion crystal.
Okay, I'll offer the following clarification. Move to approve as part of the non-affiliated wage benefit package for 2018-19, which was approved by the Board of Selectmen at the regular meeting of April 4, 2018, that the unaffiliated employees who received a step increase and a 2.5 gross wage increase, GWI in fiscal year 17-18, that are part of the defined contribution will get no GWI in fiscal year 18-19, but will get 2% additional in their 401k. These unaffiliated employees are the finance director, the director of public works, the town engineer, and the deputy public works director.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Any comments?
Just to make sure people understand, they're not getting a GWI or any type of step either.
There's nothing in there.
This
right.
is, this is it, so that's it.
That's where we weren't clear. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Terrific. You good with that, Anna?
Yes,
Okay. Sorry for the fuzziness last week or 2 weeks ago. We have a notice for the annual town meeting and the budget referendum that is coming up before you know it.
Notice of annual town meeting and budget referendum. Town of East Lyme, notice of annual town meeting. Notice is hereby given of the annual town meeting to be held on Monday, May 14, 2018, at the East Lyme High School Auditorium at 7 p.m. to act on the following. 1, to review and discuss the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018, as recommended by the Board of Finance. A, in accordance with Chapter 7.3 of the Town Charter, the moderator shall adjourn the annual budget meeting to a referendum on the voting machines. The budget resolution will be submitted to the persons qualified to vote in a town meeting by referendum, by machine vote, which referendum shall take place on May 24, 2018, at the East Lyme Community Center from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 2, to adopt a 5-year capital plan, and 3, to conduct such other business as may properly come before the meeting. Dated at East Lyme, Connecticut, this 18th day of April 2018, East Lyme Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Comments? Correct?